Amanda Thompson, a talented Black teacher, faced harsh pressure from the principal, who humiliated her in front of students. Secret recordings of her mistreatment spread online, exposing the principal's cruelty. Mr. Garrett, a middle-aged man with neatly combed gray hair and a perpetually strict suit, always emphasized Brooksville High's high standards. He declared his goal was to maintain order and discipline. He carefully monitored every process, demanding flawless adherence to his directives. Any deviation was seen as a challenge to his authority. When Amanda Thompson joined, Garrett greeted her with a cold, formal smile hiding quiet discontent. He noted her impressive resume but doubted her. "Let's see how she handles this," he thought. Amanda, confident and ready, didn't notice the frosty look. From her first days, Garrett closely watched her. He assigned Amanda the toughest classes: rowdy seniors, a notorious troublemaker, and struggling students needing special attention. Amanda accepted every task with enthusiasm, but Garrett always found something to criticize. "Your lessons need to be stricter," he said, reviewing her lesson plans. "This is not the place for innovative methods. I expect discipline here." Trying to win approval, Amanda followed his directives, staying late, preparing extra materials, and tutoring students. Yet, Garrett continued assigning tougher tasks, raising the bar. The first month's climax was an open lesson for all teachers and the principal. Amanda prepared interactive tasks to engage students, but Garrett interrupted just 15 minutes in, declaring it poorly organized and unacceptable for his school. Amanda left the classroom, feeling her enthusiasm wane. She realized her every move was under scrutiny, and none seemed to impress Garrett. Students, noticing his attitude, began mimicking it. Still, she resolved to prove herself, refusing to give up. Every day was a test of not only professionalism, but also strength of spirit. Amanda poured her heart into her work. After classes, when most teachers left, she stayed behind, helping students who needed extra support. She reviewed material, patiently explaining unclear topics, believing every student deserved a chance. Her lessons were lively, using games, discussions, and skits to make learning engaging. However, Principal Garrett, attending some lessons, remained unimpressed. He wanted strict, traditional methods, where kids sat quietly and followed rules without question. Whenever Garrett found the slightest reason to criticize, he did. During one meeting, he turned to Amanda, accusing her of incompetence. "Thompson, your methods aren't working," he said coldly, his gaze over his glasses. "You're too lenient. We need order, not your creative approach." He made his point in front of the staff, shaming Amanda, who remained calm despite feeling humiliated. One of the worst moments came when Garrett barged into her class unannounced, criticizing her in front of the students. He called her material too complicated and not aligned with standards, despite his disdain for innovation. Though her voice trembled with resentment, Amanda continued, determined not to show weakness. Each morning, Amanda felt her confidence erode. Exhaustion showed in her eyes, yet a resilient flame burned within. Yielding to Garrett meant defeat, but she believed her methods could make a difference, even if others saw it as a flaw. At the next meeting, Garrett publicly humiliated her again, while some colleagues nervously avoided eye contact. They knew she was right, and that the principal's criticism was unfair, but no one spoke up. Tensions in the teacher's lounge grew, and Amanda's sense of isolation deepened. Yet she continued fighting, certain that her truth would be recognized. Rumors of the conflict between Garrett and Amanda spread with surprising speed. Students who had previously watched the principal's clashes with the teacher with trepidation now began to notice the details. In the school hallways, whispers about Garrett's unfair treatment of Amanda grew louder. Parents, too, noticed the rising tension and began to question why the new teacher was under such intense scrutiny. Some students, especially upperclassmen, secretly began recording Garrett's aggressive comments toward Amanda. They posted these recordings on social media, quickly attracting local attention. Videos of Garrett reprimanding Amanda went viral, sparking outrage among parents and even some teachers. Comments under the videos were full of support for Amanda and criticism of the principal. Parents began attending school meetings with questions, demanding explanations from the administration. Brooksville High became the center of a local scandal. Local media picked up the story, curious about what was happening behind closed doors at one of the city's prestigious schools. Journalists arrived at the school, trying to interview students and teachers. The pressure on Garrett increased, but he stubbornly stood his ground, assuring everyone that this is just an attempt to undermine the school's authority, and that Amanda does not meet the high standards I uphold. Nevertheless, students and parents continued to support Amanda. Her patience, sincerity, and attention to every student became visible even to those who had never paid attention to her methods before. They saw that she was genuinely trying to make learning engaging and accessible for everyone. One day, during a history lesson taught by Garrett, a pivotal moment occurred. Among the students was a teenager named Matthew, an upperclassman known for his bluntness and fearlessness in expressing his opinions. His mother was a journalist at a local newspaper, and he knew how important it was to raise uncomfortable questions. In the middle of the lesson, as Garrett once again tried to discredit Amanda, Matthew suddenly raised his hand. "Why do you think Ms. Thompson isn't fit to work here?" he asked loudly, forcing the entire class to go silent. Garrett's eyes widened in shock, and he froze, not knowing how to react. A tense silence hung in the room, with all eyes on the principal, who clearly hadn't expected such a question. Garrett tried to gather himself and respond, but his voice faltered. Her methods," he stammered, searching for words, but the students weren't listening anymore. They saw his hesitation and recognized that his accusations lacked real basis. Standing at the board, Amanda felt her heart swell from the unexpected support. She realized that she was no longer alone in this fight. Her students, the very children she had worked late nights for, stood up for her. This was the moment she understood. Her efforts and love for teaching had not been in vain. The students and their parents supported her, seeing her not just as a teacher, but as someone who genuinely cared about their future. From that moment, the situation began to change. More and more students spoke out in her support, and parents kept up the pressure on the administration. Garrett felt control of the situation slipping away, but he had no plan to regain his lost footing. Matthew's confrontation marked the beginning of the end for his attempts to discredit Amanda. Under growing public and parental pressure, the school board could no longer ignore the escalating scandal. More and more people demanded clarity, and finally, the decision was made to launch an internal investigation. The board, made up of local representatives and education experts, gathered in one of the school's spacious conference rooms to discuss the allegations against Principal Garrett. Parents, teachers, and students were invited to provide their testimony to shed light on the situation. The investigation began with student interviews. Many of them, encouraged by their parents' support, spoke about Garrett's unfair treatment of Amanda, how she stayed after school to help every student, and how Garrett humiliated her in front of everyone. Some teens, despite their nervousness, showed videos on their phones taken during moments when the principal unfairly reprimanded Amanda. These videos were a real shock to the board members. The evidence was undeniable. Next came the testimony of Amanda's colleagues. Some of them, while remaining neutral, confirmed that they had seen how Garrett gave Amanda the most difficult assignments and was biased against her from the very start. Others, inspired by the students' courage, admitted they had long been afraid to speak up against the principal for fear of losing their jobs, but were now ready to support Amanda, acknowledging her contribution to the school's development and her genuine commitment to improving the educational process. When it was Amanda's turn to speak, she entered the room with a confidence that the board members hadn't expected to see. She calmly and methodically presented her side of the story, without accusations or dramatics. She talked about how she tried to meet Garrett's high expectations, the extra lessons, and late-night preparations, and her desire to help every student. Her sincerity and composure made a strong impression. The school board understood that this was no longer just an internal conflict, but a case of systemic injustice. After long meetings and discussions, they reached a decision. Garrett was fired in disgrace. His actions had caused the school great harm, damaging its reputation. This decision sparked a wave of emotion among students and parents. They celebrated the triumph of justice. Several years later, having overcome all the difficulties, Amanda did not stop at her achievements. She continued her career in education, eventually becoming the head of an educational department. She brought into the system her ideas and methods that Garrett once mocked, but were now recognized as effective and progressive. Her successes didn't go unnoticed, and she was soon invited to an even higher position. Amanda became the Secretary of Education. Now, as secretary, Amanda dedicated herself to improving conditions for all teachers. She knew what it was like to face bias and discrimination, and her top priority was creating a supportive and fair educational environment for everyone. She initiated numerous reforms aimed at raising teacher standards, improving working conditions, and combating discrimination in schools. Amanda's story became a symbol of how one woman, who faced injustice, could change the system. It showed everyone that even the darkest moments could become the beginning of great change if you don't give up and continue to believe in yourself and your mission. Her success inspired other teachers who also began fighting for justice and weren't afraid to voice their opinions, even if it went against established norms.